GM, and welcome to the Non-Fungible Creator Show. This is your host, Non-Fungible TC, Non-Fungible Today, and Non-Fungible Tomorrow for Avium and for Alphacons, which some of you might know him as. And today, I'm really excited to have an amazing guest. He has a very inspiring Web 2 to Web 3 story, and that is Ivan Yeo, one of the founders of Avium. So, Ivan, welcome to the channel. So glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to your show, Timothy. Pleasure is all mine.
Same. I mean, the pleasure is all mine as well. So to start off, can you share more about yourself before Web3 and tell us more about your background?
Yeah, my name's Ivan, aka Alpha Kongs. I think prior to Web3, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. Ever since I graduated, I've always been, kickstarting on this whole entrepreneurship journey. Prior to Avium, most of my time was spent within the eSports, creator economy, gaming kind of like industry. Last company I built was EVOS, one of the largest esports organization in Asia, and kind of expanded that whole ecosystem around gaming, creator economy, and Web3 blockchain gaming guilds as well.
So that's really interesting. For those people who are watching who might not be really familiar with the Southeast Asian or esports space, can you share more about what exactly you have been doing in the Web2 space?
Yeah, I think my last company we really capitalized on this whole mobile gaming kind of explosion in the last 6 to 7 years. And if you look at some of the top titles within the esports industry, I'd say out of the top five, three stems from mobile gaming, right? You have games like PUBG Mobile, Free Fire, Mobile Legends are some of the top games in the Asia region. And I pretty much built the largest brand within all those games and built an ecosystem around it. I think in terms of numbers, I feel like mobile gaming is kind of looked down upon in the West, but I think especially in the APAC region, China, Southeast Asia, India, I think it's massive, right? I mean, you have close to 1.4 billion mobile gamers in the region, of which more than 40% to 50% of that actually watches and participates in esports content. So that was a massive opportunity for me to tap on, especially when building this whole concept of the attention economy.
So I learned that you have been running a very successful esports ecosystem and esports business, but unfortunately you experienced a major setback at the peak of your career. So do you mind sharing more about this? What happened and how was you feeling back then?
Yeah, sometimes things happens in life, and pretty much spent the last 6 years of my life devoting my time towards building a legacy or building a landmark that inspires and gives hope to future generations. And I think knowing that you were blessed with an incurable disease and being told that, when the doctor told me that, you have 5 years left, to kind of walk, talk, or maybe potentially even eat. I think that kind of made me go all in, right? Go all in into my entrepreneurship journey and really focus on building something that actually has an impact on people's lives. And I feel like it really depends on how you look at things. So oftentimes when you're a recipient of like negative news, you can choose to kind of go down the negative path of thinking it's all over, or you can take a step back and understand that you have a choice. You have a choice to choose between the negative of it's over, I can't walk, it's all over, there's no cure, or you can look at it from a positive lens where, okay, it might be limited. I might not be optimal from a physical perspective, but I can still be strong on a mental, on a strategic, on really still being a top tier entrepreneur and really building things that actually can impact society and build a legacy. And I think for me, that was the mindset or the mentality that I chose. And looking back, I would say that it's probably the best thing that happened to me, right? if it wasn't for a setback or news like this, I'll probably just be like any other entrepreneur, thinking about making money, trying to catch the next wave in the business cycle, and just doing business. But with news like that, it no longer is about building a business. It's more about building for success, building for legacy, and making sure that I'm bringing people along with me towards building something that has a higher purpose.
So yeah, I understand that. Definitely it's not easy. I mean, I've been reading some of the articles about Kennedy. It's called Kennedy illness, right? So basically, it affects your muscles and something like that. And yeah, like from what you've been saying, it's like it's very inspiring in a sense that because a lot of people when they come to the Web3 space, it's always like very money driven, right? If you can mint out your project or if you could do something, you are successful, right? But the way you're seeing this is more about how can I leave like a legacy here? Like how can I really make an impact with this technology and to really use the skills in the Web2 space and apply it into Web3 space. And that's also why I found the Web3 space and also how NFTs and crypto. I just think like it could definitely change life when applied correctly. So just out of curiosity, how do you first come across crypto, NFTs, or maybe even blockchain gaming, right? And also as a eSports practitioner, what was the initial thought? Do you think it was a scam, a Ponzi, but then in the end you started to get to know more about the space and to really want to build something with it?
Yeah, I think started looking into it during my time building EVOS, but I always thought that it was like a bit scamish. It was only after I stepped down from being a CEO of EVOS that I really dived in and really tried to understand, what is a Web3 company? What does it mean to build a Web3 company or a Web3 ecosystem? And what's the fundamental so-called opportunity that Web3 provides? And it really clicked for me um, when I was researching, algorithmic game theory and auction theory during my research process. And in one of that piece of theory, they talk about value, and they kind of dissected value into three parts. The first one was financial value, the second one was economic value, and the third one was social value. And the way I saw Web3 was that at its core, what it allows us to do for the first time ever in history is to look at value creation from a social perspective via NFTs and value creation from an economy perspective via tokens. And the moment you know that, right? And after spending 6 years trying to build a Web2 attention ecosystem kind of play, whereby attention is a function of social value and ecosystem is a function of economic value, Web3 just clicked for me. And for the first time ever in my career, I've never been so confident in whatever I'm building.
I guess that was your aha moment where you decide to just like merge your Web2 experience and to use the values that you were talking about and complement it with Web3 and to amplify it with what you're building right now. How do you build your team? Like, because I know that once you were diagnosed with the Kennedy illness, you took a step back, you took a break, right? And then in our previous calls, you were like, you said you were so bored, and then you wanted to start something new. So how did this journey begin?
Yeah, I mean, I think broad is an understatement. So, oftentimes if you're an entrepreneur, you, especially if you're like a fourth time, fifth time kind of like entrepreneur, you only start something when you are fortunate enough to be blessed with that vision, blessed with the right people, and blessed with the right team. So I think that everything kind of fell into place for Avium, whereby as I did my research, that vision came to me, that you know that I to see like how to build this whole thing up down to the phases, down to like the frameworks, down to who I need, what I need, all that stuff just came to me. And once you know that, it's very hard to not pursue it because you know for a fact that I'm probably the only one that can do it. So I think that was kind of what kickstarted it. Building the team was pretty easy, to be honest, because in the Web2 space, when you build your team, and it boils down to expertise, professionalism, their resume, all that kind of stuff. But building a Web3, I kind of saw it differently as, in Web2, it's very tech-centric kind of ecosystem, and Web3 was very people-centric ecosystems. So building the team meant that I'm looking for people that believes in people, that wants to build for people. And I think that's the most important, I would say, culture that I want to develop within Avium, right? Like, the beauty about Web3 is that as long as you build the right things for the right people and allow people to progress in their life, naturally value will be created, and naturally the financial part will be figured out as well.
So I understand that you built, like, you didn't just build your community, you didn't just open a Discord out of the blue or whatever. Like, you really took the time. You were talking about the frameworks and building the social aspect to it. And I know that when you first started out, you were interviewing people, right? You're interviewing people to take part in the Founders Pass Mint, which is now sitting around at 2 ETH. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at things from like conversion funnel perspective, right? How do we bring new people into our community while converting them into believers of our community itself? And naturally, we thought about doing this whole application kind of meta to filter out and get to know who is coming in, doing the one-on-one to establish trust and rapport between us and the community itself, and then actually flew down to their country to actually meet all of them, so that they kind of makes it more human, right? Taking a more human approach to building a community was kind of how we saw it. Because a lot of times, especially in Web3 during a bull market, I think that human element is kind of lost, right? The trust element is kind of lost, especially in a virtual world, a virtual space, and especially in a trustless kind of like network. So kind of looking at the other side, focusing on trust, focusing on people, focusing on, making sure that all these are covered so that the community has that strong foundation.
Wow. So yeah, we've been teasing about this. We've been kind of leading the way to talk about Avium, which is the project that you're working right now. I know that there's like it's a whole ecosystem. It's not just a profile picture project that people who do not do their own research would know. Could you share more about how the three different elements of Avium fit together? Because I do know that you have three different Twitter accounts. You have Avium World, and then you have Avium Origins, and then you have Avium eSports. So there's three different elements to it. Can you share more about it?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we're building a decentralized esports ecosystem, onboarding Web2 media properties into Web3, and establishing, the gaming attention and distribution set of things for the entire Avium world. On top of that, we're laying that foundation for studio infrastructure and IP media asset library, bringing together the fragmented studio industry in Asia to come together, leveraging Web3 to co-create, co-own, and enable decentralized access to whatever we built, and all this is built on top, a strong community core, laying that right foundation for the community, building the infrastructure, and ensuring that the community can progress together with us as we build this entire Avium ecosystem. I think a lot of people in the Web3 space claims to build IP, but IP by itself is pointless if you have not covered distribution, right? So, the IP side, building that asset library, building that IP foundation, and pairing that with the distribution that comes with esports creators and all that stuff naturally allows us to establish that flywheel where you can have amazing content, amazing world building, but tied to the distribution side of things on the esports and the creator.
So my understanding is that with Avium, what you're trying to do is that because I know you will have is it like a TV show, a series, right? And then you will have the esports team, and then you will have a bunch of different type of IP. So what you're doing is that by having a community base, which is like a base layer, and also you have creators, which is maybe the gamers themselves. What you're doing is that usually in Web 2 is actually very fragmented, right? You have game esports team, you have studios that build games, you have studios that build the series and stuff like that. But with Avium, what you're trying to do is to combine all of them. And with that, it's so much easier to distribute it, especially in the Web3 space, where you have different type of parties under the same umbrella. Is that the concept?
Yeah, pretty much. Because I think, if you look at things by itself, like if you look at IP by itself, there's no leverage and it's so difficult for IP creator to actually go to market. If you look at esports by itself as a standalone, it's so hard for them to become profitable because their largest profitability driver is actually digital assets. So in essence, when we bring together this group of pillars, they're all solving inherently each other's problem. And that's kind of the mindset that we need to take when building an ecosystem from scratch. Your initial pillars must be synergistic and must solve each other's problem, whereby if everyone does their best and actually builds what they set out to build, everyone kind of wins. And that's the whole kind of ethos of Web3, right? Building for people and building that kind of like strategy where everyone wins together.
So I do have a question here for you though. And the first one is that not everyone in Web3 is a gamer, right? So what can they get out of this, being part of this project, I would say. But the second question is that, Web3, blockchain, actually, or NFTs in general have a very bad vibe in the gaming space, right? If you look at a lot of gaming magazines, they're very pessimistic about NFTs. They think it's another cash grab. So how would you be able to onboard those gamers as well? So maybe you can answer the first one first. Like for non-gamers, what could they get out of this ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, like for non-gamers, so I mean, gaming is quite straightforward. Esports is quite straightforward from the gaming side. But if you look at non-gamers, and let's say you look at it from, let's say, an investment perspective, what everything that we've done so far basically brings in close to 1.5 billion annual views, access to 600 over million gamers in the Asia region, and puts our brand in basically all the Web2 games in the form of digital assets. And I believe that there's no other project in the space that can do what we do. Right? These are things that people dream of doing post-mint. But the fact that we can actually execute on that without taking a single cent kind of shows you that what we can, the potential of what we can do moving forward is vast and open.
So how about the question for gamers? So how are you gonna introduce gamers to the Web3 space where it might have some bad branding? I would say, yeah.
Yeah. So to be honest, I think that depends on which country you're viewing it from. So I think when it comes to like Web3 and gaming, majority of people kind of look at it from the Western lens. And when it comes to the gaming industry, the Western market has always been slow to adopt to new forms of content and new forms of entertainment. For example, I think the whole mobile gaming kind of like explosion pretty much left the West, kind of in limbo. Most of that was captured by countries like China, Asia Pacific, India, and so on. So I would say that it's more about which country you're talking about, and it's also all about where you want to start off with. Instead of targeting the Western markets where they are anti NFTs, there's this whole other part of the world where they love NFTs because the whole concept of digital assets, social value has already been in place for the last 6 years. So I think choice of market and knowing where the opportunity is to kind of get your first foot in is incredibly important and makes it so much easier for you to kind of scale and build your ecosystem from 0 to 1.
So and it is because of this choice of market, right? You're building this community, and the best way to start that to a certain extent is having a profile picture, right? Where you identify with a certain project or identify with a certain IP. And I know that one of the really exciting thing that's coming out like very soon is your mint for Avium Origins, and one of the really interesting thing that captured my eye is that if you really look at the art that you guys have been doing, one aspect that you guys do highlight is the Southeast Asian traits and also Southeast Asian aspect, which is the origin of the whole project, right? Can you share more about this? And also, what are your thoughts of Asian or Southeast Asian representation in the Web3 space?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's not Southeast Asian. We do a lot of Asian kind of like traits, and I think if you look at art from the perspective of like market segments, you kind of have your pixelized art, you have your 2D profile picture, you have your anime art, you have your 3D art, and I think when it comes to identity, you kind of want to find something that's unique, that stands out, that allows a more different kind of like art form to be expressed. And I think that's the reason why we went with this art style. And on top of that, from an IP building perspective, it's also good to kind of stand out from that perspective, because like if let's say we did anime art, immediately I'm not really competing with any Azuki. I'm competing with the massive Japanese anime industry where everyone right now is looking to kind of purchase and license Japanese IP. But if let's say we look at Asia art outside of Japan, you have the manhwa from Korea, you have dongman from China, and you have this large variety of other art style that is present in the market. But none of these are really mainstream as of yet. If they are, it's not so much on the animation side of things, it's more on the film side of things. So for us, I think taking this approach allows us to really position correctly and really craft that whole category that we can kind of attain at the top of mind. Because, when we talk about attention boils down to being number one. And if you're not number one, you'll never get attention. So knowing which segments it's easy for you to be number one is incredibly important here. And it's also the opportunity that Web3 provides today, because, number of founders in the space have tanked tremendously since the bear market. If we talk about, founders in the NFT space in the APAC region, it's probably less than 10 legitimate ones. So it's an extremely blue ocean. And there's so many ways to innovate when it comes to not just technology, but business model innovation, strategic innovation, or even ecosystem innovation. And I think that's what we're trying to spearhead moving forward.
So you were talking about finding your own niche in terms of the profile picture art, right? So for Avium, would you say this is more game concept type of art, like game concept art?
Yeah. So number one is you can find your own niche. Number two is you can define your own category. And right now, if you look at this whole concept of metaversal content or metaverse IP, it's pretty much untapped, right? And the reason why we do what we do today is because we want to be the ones that define it, right? So when we look at the metaverse, essentially it's about virtual integration, virtual reality, or what we call minimum viable immersion, whereby you want to be immersed not just from the perspective of in the game world itself, but also find that link to the real world, whereby if you're able to experience a brand in the real world and in the virtual world, that's what I believe minimum viable immersion is to a metaverse IP. And how we're doing that is, aside from building the IP, everything in the world that we're establishing is tied to our business pillar. So, for example, our eSports ecosystem is called Slate. Slate is actually integrated into the IP side of things to kind of create that more immersive experience. And I think this is something that we're trying to spearhead, and we're trying to kind of set the playbook or define that category. Because, when it comes to like, fundraising in the future or talking to distributors on the media networks or SVODs, how you position your IP is incredibly important for how you're going to go to market.
So I think one of the strength that you have is definitely the team that you have, and also your background, in the Web2 space in building that ecosystem. And because the thing that captivated me from Avium is that it's a team, right? It's everyone is stocks in a team. Everyone have a really interesting background. Even yourself, you have a very interesting background, and like, all of the art, all of the animations that you guys have been doing is actually very like it's done by like a game studio, which it is, right? It's done by people who have been working with a lot of big Web2 IP brands. So definitely that's the aspect of you're not just a bunch of young kids trying to do a startup, right? But like a very seasoned veteran in the esports space and also in the gaming space. But even though you have such a huge accomplishment in the Web2 space, I really appreciate one thing, and that is you guys do spend time to schedule one-on-one calls with your community members. Which is something that I definitely really appreciate, because time is the most valuable thing, and I believe that in this space as well. So just out of the curiosity, like when you like the way that you do this, right, is that you have different tiers of your mint. You have the initiated, which is the whitelist tier where people could fill in the form, like the form application matter, and then you approve it so they get the whitelist. But in order to level up from that, right, in order to get the OG status, they will have to meet you guys one-to-one. Who came up with that idea, and what are you planning to do with that? And would you think that this kind of format is very difficult to scale, but because you have to meet them one-to-one, right? You don't have unlimited time. So yeah, what is your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much how I built EVOS, right? And this is, if you actually study how massive brands were created, BTS, Blackpink, and all these like massive brands, it all boils down to that first 1,000 believers in that brand. And when you are starting from scratch, everything that you do is to find that first 1,000, because you can build hype, you can get 100,000 people in your Discord, they're all grinding for your servers, but if you don't really know who your true fans are, then you don't really have a brand. Because the function of an amazing brand is how many advocates, how many loyal members, and how many contributing members you have in your community. And doing this one-on-one allows us to kind of search for that, develop that, and essentially work towards crafting that whole community infrastructure to support whatever we are building. And on top of that, right, a lot of projects say that they're community first, but how can you ever be community first if you do not even know who you're building for? So this one-on-one, all this IRL meetups, is basically us getting to know our community members, and they are pretty much the motivation to why we do all this stuff. Because when you know who you are working for, who you are supporting, then you are doing 10x the required amount just to make sure that when you look that person in the eye, you can tell them, trust me, we got this. I think that's the ultimate form of trust that needs to be established between founders and community if you want to build something that lasts generation and not just lasts one hype cycle.
Was it easy to do this? Because in the Web3 space, there's a lot of people who are not docs, right? There are a lot of anonymous people. So was it easy to implement this at first?
No, it's very easy for us because it's just in our DNA, right? I've built a brand before, going from 0 to over 100 million kind of like fan base, and oftentimes when it comes to people, it's doing all these unscalable things that matters. And I know for a fact that going down the road, the next 3 to 5 years, 99% of entrepreneurs will never do this. And us doing this lays a solid foundation for our community and for whatever we plan to build moving forward. So knowing the fact that just doing one-on-ones and really caring about who you bring in and how you interact with them and how you support them will become a competitive advantage for whatever you do. If you know that, why wouldn't you do it? It takes a lot of time, but it also allows us to kind of learn from the community itself. So I think it's a win-win on both sides.
Was there a interview that was very remarkable in your own opinion, like something that is unforgettable?
Yeah, so I was talking to this guy. He was from Australia, and he was asking me about like my condition and how I overcame it, and we really connected on that conversation because like for him, he spent the first 20 years of his life not being able to hear, and once he got healed, or once things started to improve, that's where he found Web3. And he actually was like a crypto OG and really built himself up within the crypto space. And without doing all these calls, you would never meet people like that ever, you know, down your life journey. So it's been a very inspiring kind of like past 9 months, talking to people from across the world, across different backgrounds, and really learning about them and knowing how we can potentially support them and change their lives trajectory. So I think it's very inspiring to do all this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. Like where Web3 is a place that can enable this because it just spans so many different industries. It spans globally. It's not no longer just local. And you were talking about life changing and some a very remarkable discussion, right? And usually when we talk about life changing, we think of something that is like positive, like you win the lottery, right? That type of positive and stuff like that, or maintain a blue chip project. But as someone who's experienced something that's a life changing event that basically change your perspective, right? Or someone who's at the lowest point in their life, right? Who's watching this, like what as someone who has gone through this and is trying to rekindle your passion in the Web3 space, what would be your advice to those people who's watching this, who's going down through like really tough moments in life, and what would you, as someone who's gone through that period, say to them?
Most people always look forward to the highs of success, how much you can make, how amazing or popular I can become, and all that stuff. But one thing I've learned is that if you kind of switch that around and learn to appreciate the lows, but anticipate the excitement of coming back, then it changes your whole viewpoint on how things are. Like when you learn to appreciate your setbacks, knowing that these are all things that makes you a better person or prepares you for a better future, then I think that really change how your viewpoint on how things are. Because if you put things in perspective, right? In order to become rich, you need to learn to be poor. In order to be strong, you need to know what it's like to be weak. And life is all a balance. And knowing that there are prerequisites to whatever you want to achieve, and knowing that you need to experience that before you can kind of get to what you want, kind of gives you a fresh perspective on how to view the ups and downs of whatever journey you're going on.
Wow, thank you for these powerful words, Ivan. So before we end, is there any final thoughts that you want to share before we wrap this up?
I mean, to be honest, you know, as a as an entrepreneur for like the last 10 years, nothing is more stressful than going into mint. That's probably the most stressful because like you don't really know what's gonna happen. So hopefully that we have demonstrated that we can execute. We have built that trust, that we're not gonna leave and we're doing what is best for the Web3 space and for the community. So if you like what you see and what you hear, give us a follow, keep track of our journey and look forward to seeing you guys in the Avium world.
I think regardless of what happens during the mint, right? At least you have that 1,000 people, right? You have that 1,000 people that's gonna support you. And I just can't help myself but to ask this: how many interviews have you been doing in the past few months?
I mean, across the last 9 months, probably over 5,000 one-on-one interviews, and think we did at least 20 meetups across APAC.
Amazing. That's like 5,000 hours invested to know more about your community, and I can't think of another community that would take another founder that was and also team that would spend so much time and effort. Anyways, this is, guys, if you're watching this is genuine. I don't have any vested interest. I'm not a founder's pass holder or whatever. It's just that what Ivan has been doing with the team, and also what Ivan's story, like I've been reading him up, like doing my research. I just think like it's just so inspiring. So this concludes the end of our show. I'll definitely support them. Check out the Twitter. The links will be in the description link below. They have 3 different Twitter accounts, so be sure to follow all of them. Join their Discord. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Ivan. For those of you who like the content, remember to press like and subscribe, press the bell button, and follow everyone's social media. Until next time, live every day non-fungibly. Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time.
Bye bye.